All right, so this is what we're gonna do. Welcome everybody. My name is Airback47. Tonight we're gonna be covering the public test 15.4 balance changes devlog. Captains, we are applying balancing changes to a number of ships based on an analysis of both their combat statistics and player feedback. These changes will take effect on April 23rd, with the exception of Modicam, which will be affected on April 30th. Okay, so what do we got here? We got a bunch of Italian battleships, right? Looks like the whole tech tree Italian battleship all the way up to tier 7. Okay, dispersion pattern change. Yes, this is something the Italian battleships have struggled with. Horrible dispersion. Well, let's go through this here. Dispersion pattern changes. These ships will now have a higher accuracy at closer to medium ranges, which will degrade significantly at longer ranges. This will be similar in principle to the Soviet battleships, but with a higher base dispersion. Okay, we'll come back to that once we go down through here. And as you can see here, that gives you the values for the ships altogether. All right, now they're also making changes. It looks like they're changing the whole tech tree, which is actually really cool, starting at tier 4. All right, the tier 8 Veneto. What are they going to do here? Stock module maximum fire range increase from 16.5 to 17.3. That's actually really nice on a tier 8 ship. A researchable module maximum fire range increase from 18.1 to 19. So they're giving it just shy of another kilometer. That's actually kind of cool. And here we go. We're going to talk more about the dispersion pattern here. The dispersion pattern change. The ship will now have a higher accuracy at closer to medium ranges, which will degrade significantly at longer firing range. This is similar in principle to the Soviet battleship branch, but with a higher base dispersion. Okay, literally said the same thing about all the rest of the ship. All right, so it looks like overall they're changing from tier 4 to tier 7, the dispersion, and the tier 8, 9, and 10, they're also making changes to the firing ranges themselves, which is actually kind of nice. Also, the Veneto spotting aircraft consumable was removed. You're not going to have the fighter consumable anymore. Okay, so they're basically giving it a kilometer range and removing the spotter point. Okay. Lepanto looks like they're doing something very similar here. Here's the values. I'm not going to read them off. You can actually see them. But here's the one that we all were looking at, chat, right? Colombo. The Colombo is totally not busted with a ledge mod at all, right? So what are they going to do to make changes here to the Colombo? They previously nerfed slightly the ledge mod. They actually took away one smoke. What they're going to do here with the Colombo is the main battery parameters are changed. Again, very similar to what we just read. Maximum main battery firing range increased from 18.9 to 19.9. So again, they're giving it a higher range, and it looks like they're removing the spotter plane. So we're following the trend all the way through the tech tree line here. Dispersion pattern change. The ship will now have a higher accuracy at close to medium ranges, which will degrade significantly at longer range, similar to the Soviet battleships. That's actually kind of nice, because even at range, the current setup with a Colombo, you can still, with a fighter plane even, you know, chunk other battleships at range with 16 guns very easily at 20 kilometers. I mean, you can take ships for 34,000. I've seen it, 30,000 at those ranges. So instead of having them as like a more of like a sniper role, they're forcing the Colombo to kind of push in a little bit closer, along with the Lepanto, and it looks like the rest of the line. They do have smoke, so they can kind of get away with it. And I actually kind of like that a little bit. I think it almost looks like a buff, but you're gonna have to play a little bit closer in. There's another chart that I wanted to show on screen, and Classic actually sent this to me before we start. It looks like they're here's the parameters here, the dispersion changes and stuff with the Colombo.
Oh, that was Kilo.
That was Kilo that posted this in there. Okay, legendary inserts new variation range. So basically what this is showing here is the farther the range, you know, being how far the ship's away from you, the worse your dispersion's getting. This is the old version. This is the new version. That's a ledge mod with the new version. Okay, so this is what's happening here. You know, as obviously the closer you are to your ships now, okay, your accuracy will pretty much remain the same. But looks like starting here about 14, 15 kilometers, your dispersion groups start to really get pretty massive. Okay, And this looks like the meters in which your shells will fall, right? So say you're at 7 kilometers with a legendary mod, all your rounds, every single one of them are going to fall right around, we'll say, inside of a circle that's 35 meters. That's what we're looking at here. So this yellow and green line is what currently exists. As you can see, there's really not much change with the dispersion group, even at range, right? What they're doing is the farther you get out, the more dispersed your shells will get. So that's what we're looking at here with this chart. And that's pretty significant. Instead of a Columbo with a ledge mod and a spotter plane being able to do the same damage at 18, 19 kilometers that they could at 9, okay, or, 10, 11 kilometers is pretty nutty. So not only are they taking away the spotter plane, they're also increasing the dispersion at range. So you're going to have less hits on target at farther ranges with a Columbo, where before it wouldn't matter. You don't understand what I'm saying? So, that ship is, I think that's a good nerf.
All right, for the super ship Affondatore, dispersion paddle, just like the other ones. And then they're also getting a base shell switching time, so not much change there, really.
Okay.
For the Abruzzi, they
like
get
this
a
cruiser.
Submarine surveillance, which is great. I mean...
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Everybody wants submarine surveillance, especially if you like Abruzzi, you're gonna really like that. Then you get Tier 9 Brindisi. Detectability is moved back a little bit, so you get a little bit more space. I really like Brindisi, and this is gonna be nice.
Yeah, that's going to feel a lot more playable. The guns, the rest of the ship is going to be the same. So it's just going to have a little bit more. You'll be able to push in just slightly, just by a little bit more, not by a lot. I mean, they only adjusted it by less than a kilometer by the looks of it. So, right, 15, am I right? Yeah.
Yep.
All right, go ahead on the Adriatico. I love that DD too. Adriatico. I like it. I think,
I was mad on it, but now with a little bit better reload time and especially the detectability down just a little bit, this brings it down to where you don't get dumped on by things like Haragumos and whatever without seeing them. So yeah. Then we get into the Tier 9 Valparaiso, the battleship.
I'm gonna go ahead and take this one here. This is what we've all been waiting for, chat. Looks like the two most anticipated changes were on the Columbo, and the Valparaiso. The Valparaiso, we all know, has been crazy strong. World of Warships has been getting a ridiculous amount of feedback about this ship. It looks like they're kind of changing the heal rate. The Valparaiso, specialized repair team's consumable parameters changed. HP per second reduced from 1880 down to 15.3. What does that mean? It means you're gonna heal back at a slower rate. You're still gonna have your combat instructions. You're still gonna have your funny button. You're still gonna be able to pop your heal, but think of it more like a Sevastopol heal, where it regens at a much slower rate. Okay, right now the Valparaiso, you can push as long as you got that funny button active. You can out heal pretty much anything unless you eat a wall of torps in that thing, you can out heal 2, 3, sometimes even 4 ships that are shooting at you, and nobody can kill the Valparaiso off fast enough. So it's still going to be strong. It's still going to be a good ship, but they're reducing the rate in which it can heal. You're still going to be able to heal back what it needs to heal, but they're going to reduce the amount of time it takes to go from the minute you hit that repair party to the time your repair party's done healing. It's going to take longer to heal back, which I think is a nice touch. Also, this is another thing that was brought up based pretty much directly on player feedback. The Valparaiso, whenever this thing ate Citadel damage, okay, you could heal back 33% of it, okay? A general rule of thumb in this game, you can heal back. Now, there's always exceptions, okay? But a good rule of thumb is you can heal up to 100% of fire damage. You can heal up to 50% of penetration damage. But when your ship eats a Citadel, it doesn't matter if you're playing a cruiser, battleship, what have you, typically, under normal circumstances in this game, you can only heal back 10% of that, right? So if you take that big chunk, that Citadel, you show the side of a battleship and you get Citadeled, you can only heal back 10% of that damage. It's a critical hit. So what they're doing with the Valparaiso is they're bringing it back on par with most of the ships that are in this game. There's always a couple exceptions out there. I'm not really going to get in the weeds of it too much, but generally speaking, you can heal back 50%, of pen damage, 100% of fire damage, only 10% of Citadel damage. They're doing the exact same thing with a Valparaiso. HP restored after receiving Citadel damage reduced from 33 to 10%. That's pretty massive, especially on that hull too, because the Valparaiso hull isn't very tanky, which is like counterintuitive to think about because nobody can kill this thing off fast enough, right? It's a Vanguard hull. Okay, now that they reduce the rate in which that thing can heal back and they reduce the amount of Citadel damage that they can repair back, if you eat Citadel damage in a Valparaiso, it's going to significantly reduce its combat effectiveness on a flank. He's not going to be able to push like he's pushing now. So I think those are really nice changes. So I'm pretty excited about those two changes. I think those are the two biggest ships that we're looking at here in this dev blog, is the Valparaiso as well as changes to the Colombo. But we're going to continue on. We'll get through the rest of it. There's some other really good things coming up here too. Santaners, a tier 9 Santaner. So the Pan American Cruiser. All right, so Ultima, what are they doing here? For the main battery reload time reduced from 13 to 12 seconds. So they increase or decrease the reload time, which is really nice. And the burst fire, the alternative fire mode reload time reduced from 18.5 to 18 seconds. So they're not really significant. You know what I mean? Those aren't crazy significant changes, but your burst fire will come up half a second faster than what it is now. Okay, the tier 6 multicam, the French cruiser. Number of repair party changes reduced from 3 to 2. That's fair. That's pretty much in line with any other tier 6 cruiser. The initial number was an error, so that they're just fixing what they originally wanted to do in the first place. All right, Classic, you wanna go over the Colbert? What are they doing for everything down through?
Well, for Colbert, this is kind of big. I mean,
yeah.
Main battery firing range increased. If you've ever played Colbert, you know that those things are rainbow shells. So
yeah,
what I've heard people say is they can take a different skill and trade out their range module and use something else instead. So that's really the main benefit of this right here. Hitting something at 15 kilometers with a Colbert is hard unless they're stationary.
Yeah. It does give it a little bit of breathing room, and there's some really skilled players out there. You know, JTR can do some god tier things at the Colbert as it stands, but for the general player base, I think any cruiser at tier 10 that blows up like that thing does, even though it has a lot of damage output potential, you still got to play a lot closer than what a lot of cruiser players are typically used to playing or feel comfortable in. So giving that thing a little over kilometer worth of buffer there, I think is actually kind of a pretty nice change. It'll feel a little bit more comfortable to play that ship.
And for tier 9 Slava, this is just a small buff and AP shell damage. I think this is one of those spreadsheet adjustments that they do from time to time, just to they look and say, it's underperforming a tiny bit, we'll give it a tiny bit of a boost. So for tier 8 Nebraska, and this is one where I know that I wish Kilo were in here talking about this, but he can chime in on the chat. But the hanger plating on Nebraska and Delaware as well, and Louisiana coming up here in the discussion, this is just giving them some additional protection from battleships at range, or cruisers really at range. So
HE spam. Well, especially we're talking, Louisiana at tier 10 from 19 to 38. Almost every cruiser at tier 10 can pen 19 millimeters. It's not even an issue. So they're giving the thing a little bit more of an armored flight deck. They call it a hangar armor plating. So I'm a little confused at what they mean by that. To me, that's screaming armored flight deck, but I'm not sure if they mean that on the side plating of the ship. That's probably more what it's going to be. It's probably going to be, I think it's
the side plating, because when they talk about the flight deck, they talk about that in the next bullet point. The superstructure below the flight deck is now included in hangar armory.
Well, I can show that off really quick too. This is what they're considering like the flight deck, is this area right here. Yeah, see, this is all 19 millimeters. So they're making all that 32. Which is going to be really nice. You'll be able to angle with this thing now. Because right now, as it sits, you can't angle. If your nose onto another battleship, if we're looking at it kind of like at this profile here, it's not hard at all to get rounds to stick. And that's usually where I aim. It's pretty simple to see. You just aim for the flat spot, right? Which is below this deck. Giving that thing 32 millimeters from 19 is going to be a really nice change. I'm sorry, 38. They're bringing it to 38. So it's going to have the same armor as the flight deck, deck.
Louisiana, yeah. Louisiana and Delaware get 38, and then
Get
Nebraska
38.
gets 32.
Yep.
Nebraska gets 32. Yep.
Yep. So that's actually a pretty significant change right there. So you're going to have the same deck armor transferred onto these very squishy parts. When I'm playing Destroyer too, usually you have this kind of profile. This is where I aim. Like if I got 1 or 2 fires burning on these guys already, I'll switch over to AP and just start pumping this whole area full of AP because it's always traditionally been really squishy. You can pen that without any problems, and it's thick enough to arm the AP. So you can just, even out of a DD, even out of say like a gearing, if you're inside of the 7 kilometers and you can just keep pouring AP on this at this angle, I mean, it's really not hard at all just to do max damage with your AP. So them converting that to 38 will make that a little bit more challenging. And ricochet angles do matter, right? So,
yeah.
If you're...
The superstructure itself doesn't change. It's everything below the flight deck. So the yellow part above the flight deck, it stays the same.
Yep. So you're going to have 38 millimeters. This is going to go from 19 to 38, right? It's going to just carry up, and then your flight deck is still going to remain 38. So that's actually a really nice armor buff. I'm kind of all for that. I think that's going to make those ships a lot more comfortable to play. You're going to be able to angle where you couldn't before. You want to take on the Congress?
So this one is one of the ones that really doesn't change as far as they're getting the repair party, since they already had 2. It's one of those ones that keeps the 2 that they have.
Yes. Yep.
But they do get a tiny little bit of buff to firing range and reload time. Congress is one of those ships that, why play it over like Baltimore or something sometimes? So it's like,
right.
You can do that for economics, but there wasn't a big deal to playing Congress other than that. So this will help a little bit.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with the Congress is it's not that it's bad, it's just there's other things out there that's better to play at tier 8. So this will just put things on par a little bit more with stuff that already exists. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it, and I fully agree with Classic on that one. It looks like they're reducing the reload time slightly from 22 seconds to 20, and that's the nicest part about that ship, and that's why people just didn't like playing the Congress, because it doesn't have a lot of guns to begin with. Your firing range wasn't that great, and your reload time was like horrible. It's horrendous. So you combine that 20-second reload now with Adrenaline Rush. Mid-game, you could probably get that down to close to like 16 seconds. And that'll feel a lot better in the Congress. San Diego, I'm going to take this one over. This one's actually pretty huge. I'm not a very big cruiser player. Honestly, cruisers for me are probably one of my worst performing classes that I play in World of Warships. However, I love the San Diego. I love that it's thin. I like it. You can kick the rudder around the thing. It doesn't have a lot of damage output because it's SAP. It's either SAP or AP, so you're not starting a lot of fires. But man, there's just something about that ship that just really feels nice to play. And it does have torps, which is kind of nice. You can, throughout the game, do work over time with the San Diego. What they're doing is they're going, they are increasing the range on this by almost a full kilometer. Main battery firing range increase from 14.8 to 15.6. So again, 15.6, 15.9 is right on par with most cruisers that have, we're talking 203s, right? This thing doesn't have 203s, but you're on par with cruisers that have 203s and HE that can outrange you, right? So they're kind of leveling the playing field here a little bit, if you guys follow what I'm saying. I think that's going to be really nice. Is it going to break the ship? No. Man, I love the San Diego. See that? Just get almost that kilometer is just so nice. I'm going to read off the Sherman because this is kind of like right up my alley. I'm a DD main. You guys know that. Sherman, engine boost consumable added, which is really cool. It will share a slot with a defensive AA. So you can either trade it out for defensive AA. You can either run engine boost or defensive AA. Me, personally, on that ship, I would just run the engine boost because you can do more with it. You'll get more out of it with an engine boost, and that'll be so much nicer because that ship's kind of a smoke farmer. And, you get what happens when a DD pops smoke on a flank and starts farming. Every DD in the game just starts winging towards that smoke. So having that little bit of an acceleration buff is really nice. And the other time that you you can use an acceleration. And a lot of people don't know this, but I implement it all the time. When I find myself in a gunfight with another destroyer, I try to save my engine boost for those circumstances because it increases your acceleration time. It also increases your deceleration time. So when you got your engine boost running and you're fighting another DD, you can throttle juke a lot easier with an engine boost than if you didn't have it up and running, right? Not only can you get out of the thing can get out of its own way now if you're farming in smoke, and you can play that throttle really nicely with that engine boost when you find yourself in a 1v1 going head to head, even like with a Marceau, which is a challenge for even the Sherman. You know what I mean? So I think having that engine boost is really going to be nice. I personally recommend that you trade that out because it's just a more valuable tool on a DD. Defensive fire is nice on ships like Marceau, Holland, the whole Holland line, things, Smallin, stuff that's designed from the ground up, having really strong AA. The Sherman is not, but I wouldn't really be building in an AA on my Forest Sherman, right? That's not really what it's designed for. So if you can replace that with a little bit more of a usable consumable, I think that's a better way to go on the Sherman. Absolutely, hands down. I'm glad we had that talk. I mean, that's actually a really nice change. That's pretty big. That's pretty big with the Sherman. Do you want to cover the Cheshire and the rest of them?
Cheshire is pretty easy. That's a 1 second buff to reload time.
Ocean, the changes to Ocean are pretty huge. You want to cover that, Classic?
Yep. Number of aircraft squadron reduced from 12 to 9. Size of attacking flight reduced 4 to 3. Number of aircraft on deck reduced 24 to 18. Aircraft restoration time increased 71 to 79. So the aircraft is like a 25% nerf mostly. I mean, that's pretty big.
Yeah, that's a huge nerf on the ship. The Ocean's been incredibly strong ever since they introduced it. It has jets at tier 10, right? Usually, traditionally, so far, jets haven't really come out on a carrier until they hit that super ship status, right? Thinking United States and Eagle, right? Their torps are now worse than Audacious. Yeah. See, that's the thing though. They're just really handicapping the damage output of that thing massively. But yeah, I think that's pretty significant. You're reducing how many planes that you can put out on an attack, and you're also reducing how fast your planes can regen. So that's just a massive overall nerf. It's going to be easier to deplane. You're going to be able to deplane it faster, and the overall damage output is going to be massively reduced because you're taking away a full squadron out of every single parameter here. Out of the attacking, let's see, I think looks like they're all the attacking squadrons, right? Size, attack, and flight. So that just covers everything all together. That's everything.
Yeah, everything. It's roughly 20-25% damage reduction, or at least number of planes. Yeah.
Yep. That's really significant. Do you want to go over the Prince Eugen? Yeah. This is actually another really good, some really good changes they're making here, the Prince Eugen as well.
Yeah, you'll see me playing Prince Eugen a lot more now. They're buffing Hipper. So with the buff to Hipper giving it heals, it's actually probably better than Prince Eugen was. So with giving Prince Eugen this AP shell damage increase from 5,900 to 6,100, then the guaranteed ricochet angle, the minimum auto ricochet check. This thing is going to be crazy, and it's like Blucher level shells.
I wanted you to say it first because you were reading it, but let's decipher this a little bit because a lot of people in chat, a lot of people in this game just don't understand what this mechanic is, right? Whenever I fire AP on a ship, sometimes they get ricochets, sometimes they get sword protection hits, sometimes they get penetrations, sometimes 60% of my shells will pen, sometimes only one shell will pen. What is happening here? Well, this is a mechanic that exists in game. It's been in game ever since this game has been around. Basically, when a ship angles, right? When you think of it as like sloped armor on a tank, right? If you have 1 centimeter thick armor, okay, or 1/2 inch armor, and you turn that, say at a 45 degrees, instead of having 1 centimeter that shell or bullet needs to make it through. Now you increase that, you actually added the distance of what that thing would have to travel to penetrate the armor. We'll say like 0.5 centimeter, right? So, and these aren't actual values, I'm just putting this out here for simplicity's sake. So on a battleship, say you have 10 inches of armor, okay, straight, and your shell impacts it at a straight 90-degree angle, your shell, if it can pen 10 inches of armor, it will. Now, if that same shell can only pen 10 inches of armor and nothing more, if you angle it, all right, now that shell, if it hits it at that 45-degree angle, has more armor that it has to go through. It increases it from 10 to like 15 inches. So that's what's happening. Whenever you angle your ship, all right, I'm making the nose of my ship, all right, this is the bow. If you can angle the ship, fire around into that ship, once a certain parameter is exceeded, which is your ricochet angle, that round will skip off the ship. It will auto bounce every single time because it can't make it through the armor based on the angle. That's your ricochet angle. What they're doing with the Prince Eugen is they're giving it improved ricochet angles, right? Your AP will now be able to pen targets that are angled where you weren't able to do that before. Does that make sense? You guys follow me here? So that's a really significant change with the Prince Eugen. The American heavy cruisers, Baltimore, Buffalo, Des Moines, Salem, all come with improved ricochet angles. Whenever you hear that term, that's what they're referring to. So given the Prince Eugen an increase the damage output and improve ricochet angles, it's going to be very close to on par with the damage output of the Tier 9 Blucher, the dockyard ship. And the Blucher is an amazing Tier 9 cruiser. It was probably one of the best cruisers that they put out in a dockyard. And I'll make that statement because it's that good. So if you can take a Tier 8 Prince Eugen and get it on par as close to a Blucher as you can, that's a massive buff at Tier 8. And that thing's going to be a lot of fun to play, man. I'll finish off the last three here just because they're super easy to get to. This is the new battleship, the European battleship line that they just came out with. The Luden, the Eaton, and the Gustav. I'm probably murdering every one of those names, but that's just how I'm going to pronounce it. They're reducing the torpedo protection, right? They're going from 22% down to 15 with a Tier 6. The Tier 8's going from 22% down to 20. The Gustav, the Tier 9's getting reduced from 20% to 18%. So these aren't huge changes. The Luden's probably getting the biggest nerf of them all here, but basically this is just going to be how much reduction. Say your torp has a max damage of, and again, this is just for simplicity's sake, a max damage of 10,000 damage. You can do a max damage of 10,000 hit points on an unsaturated target. If you have a 50% torpedo hit reduction, just for simplicity's sake, that torpedo now, if it hits that part of the ship, can only do 5,000 hit points worth of damage. You understand where that comes from? And there's also other factors that tie into it, you know, with damage saturation. So that's the dev block, chat. What do you guys think? What do you guys think in chat? Is there anything you like, don't like? I think Colombo's pretty huge. I think Valparaiso's pretty huge. I think there's a lot of good things going right there, chat. I think this is actually really big news. Really big news. Prince Eugen, Ocean, Sherman, as far as I'm concerned, San Diego, Colbert, Valparaiso, and Colombo, I think, are the ships that stick out the most to me. But let me know in the comment section below, chat. What do you think was the best buff or nerf out of this dev blog? I'm curious to hear it. Again, for those of you new to my stream, my name is Zerback47. I stream every Friday, Saturday, and now Sunday on Twitch. We do World of Warships and giveaways every stream, so stop by and check it out, man.